Opening hook, 200 words. On a rain-slicked night in the city, Jack Carter, just another overworked delivery driver, takes a wrong turn that changes his life forever. In a dark alley beneath flickering streetlights, he finds a bloodied woman slumped against a dumpster. She begs him not to call the police. No ID, no explanations, just fear in her eyes. Jack helps her anyway. What he doesn't know is that she's Elena Montclair, the missing heir to a billion-dollar empire, on the run from the fiancé who tried to kill her to steal her fortune. As Jack becomes her reluctant protector, they dive headfirst into a world of corporate greed, lies, and danger that neither of them ever imagined. With every step, the mystery deepens and the threats grow more lethal. But through shadowy escapes and narrow alleyways, something unexpected happens. Trust, then love. And soon, they're not just running from a past, they're racing toward a future neither of them believed they deserved. This is more than a story of survival. It's about two broken people who find strength in each other and the courage to expose a truth powerful enough to bring down a dynasty. Because sometimes heroes wear helmets and carry takeout. The rain hit the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists, relentless and cold. Jack Carter squinted through the storm as his scooter weaved between puddles on the glistening asphalt. The city was a blur of neon reflections, cheap diners, late-night liquor stores, and the occasional flicker of movement in the shadows. Another Friday night, another shift. Deliver food, collect tips, keep his head down. That was the plan. His phone buzzed in the mount strapped to the handlebars. Next order. Thai Kitchen Express. Pickup. Deliver to a high-rise uptown. Simple. He flicked his turn signal and glided through the green light, tires skimming across slick pavement. But fate doesn't follow traffic laws. As he took a detour to avoid a construction zone, something pulled at the edge of his senses. A shape, a sound. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was dumb luck. But as he rolled past a narrow alley half hidden between an abandoned laundromat and a shuttered pawn shop, he heard it. A moan. Jack braked hard, tires squealing slightly against the wet ground. He turned his head back toward the alley, lifting his helmet's visor. For a second, he thought he imagined it. Then he heard it again, soft, ragged, pain. Cursing under his breath, Jack parked the scooter and pulled his rain jacket tighter. The alley was pitch dark, the only light coming from a single, flickering street lamp above the dumpster. He moved slowly, footsteps echoing over broken glass and wet concrete. That's when he saw her. Crumbled against the alley wall was a woman, barefoot, soaked and covered in grime. Her dark hair clung to her face, and blood stained her left sleeve. She tried to sit up as he approached, but winced and collapsed again. Hey, are you all right?" Jack asked, kneeling beside her. "Don't call anyone," she rasped, voice barely above a whisper. "Please." Her eyes, bright gray, terrified, locked onto his. There was no time to question it. She was hurt, possibly worse, but something about the way she looked at him, like he was both danger and salvation, made him freeze. "You're bleeding," he said, scanning her arm. A long gash trailed down to her elbow. "You need a hospital." "No," she said more sharply now. "No police, no ambulance, just help me hide." Jack stared. Was she running from someone? A junkie? Abused? Maybe she escaped something worse. Every reason ran through his mind, and none of them are good. "Okay, fine, but you can't stay here. Can you stand?" She nodded weakly. Jack helped her up, slinging her arm over his shoulder. She was lighter than he expected and trembling. As they moved toward the street, she kept glancing behind them, flinching at every noise. Jack helped her onto the back of his scooter. "Hold on," he said, "we'll figure it out." She clutched his waist as they took off into the night, leaving the alley and whatever secrets it held behind. 10 minutes later, they reached Jack's apartment, an old, creaking studio tucked above a shutter repair shop. It wasn't much, but it was dry, and it was safe. Jack locked the door behind them, flipped on the lights, and eased the woman down onto his couch. She looked around with guarded eyes, her fingers digging into the fabric of the cushions. "You're lucky I found you," Jack said, grabbing a first aid kit from the bathroom. "Or unlucky, depending on what kind of trouble you're in." "I didn't ask to be found," she muttered. Jack returned with the kit and knelt beside her again. "Name?" A pause. Then, "Elena." He studied her. Sharp cheekbones, high-end blouse torn at the sleeve, subtle diamond studs in her ears. Not the look of someone living on the street. "Last name?" "Does it matter?" she snapped. Jack gave her a look. "Kind of does when you're bleeding in my apartment in the middle of the night." Elena closed her eyes, jaw tight. "Just not now." He sighed, disinfected the wound, and wrapped it tightly. "You're lucky," he muttered. "Could have been worse." "Depends who you ask," she whispered. Jack didn't reply. Something about her didn't add up, but something else told him this was only the beginning. Outside, the rain kept falling. The rain hadn't stopped. It tapped steadily against the windows of Jack's apartment, a low, rhythmic beat that seemed to echo the tension in the room. Elena sat perched on the edge of the couch, a towel around her shoulders, eyes darting toward every creak and shadow. Jack busied himself cleaning up the blood-streaked gauze and wrappers from the first aid kit. "You hungry?" he asked, trying to cut through the silence. "I've got instant noodles," or "instant noodles." She didn't respond. "Elena," he said gently, "you're safe here." Her eyes shifted to him, stormy, unreadable. There was something calculating in the way she watched him. And be cautious, like a cornered animal waiting for another strike. "I need a phone," she said after a long pause. He hesitated. "To call who?" "No one, just let me check something." Jack reluctantly handed her his old burner. She typed quickly. A few seconds later, her face paled. "They've posted a reward," she said in a strained whisper, "for information on my whereabouts." Jack leaned over to look. There it was, her photo on a national news site, not bruised and bloodied like she was now, but elegant and smiling in a corporate portrait. Elena Montclair, heiress missing for 4 days. "Jesus," Jack muttered, "you're her, the Montclair girl." She looked up, jaw clenched. Not anymore. A loud knock at the door froze the moment. Elena ducked instinctively behind the couch, her breathing shallow. Jack stepped to the door, peering through the peephole. Mrs. Donovan, the landlady, holding a takeout bag. "Wrong door," Jack called out. He waited until she disappeared down the hall, then locked every bolt. Elena emerged visibly shaken. "They'll come. They always come." Jack saw it clearly now. She was hunted, and whatever she'd run from wasn't finished chasing. "You're staying here tonight," he said firmly. "We'll figure out the rest later." Morning came, but the rain didn't let up. Jack stood at the window sipping lukewarm coffee while Elena lay wrapped in a blanket on the couch. "I still think we should go to the police," he said. "No." Her tone was sharp, final. "You were almost killed. Someone needs to know." Elena sat up, her face drawn. "You don't get it. If I go to the police, James will find out, and he'll make sure I disappear for real this time." "James, your fiancé?" "Not anymore. I ended it the day before I vanished, or tried to. He didn't take it well." Jack leaned against the counter. "You think he tried to kill you?" "I don't think so. I know. He drugged me. I woke up bleeding on the bathroom floor. I barely escaped." Jack clenched his jaw. "You need to testify, Elena. Go public." "He has influence, lawyers. He'll say I'm unstable, that I ran off in a manic episode. They'll believe him." Jack ran a hand through his hair. "So what? I just hide you here until this all blows over?" "I'll be gone in a few days," she said quietly. "I just need time. That's all I'm asking." Jack met her eyes. 3 days, that's it. Then we find another way. Together. The apartment became a reluctant sanctuary. Jack called out sick from his deliveries, losing pay he couldn't afford to miss. But something told him Elena couldn't be left alone. She spent hours staring out the window or scrolling through news sites. She barely spoke, but Jack noticed every flinch, every time she double-checked the locks. That night, as Jack tossed a spare blanket on the couch, Elena asked from across the room, "Why are you doing this?" He looked up. "Because I've been where you are." She raised a brow. "I was a paramedic. One night I got a call about a kid shot during a robbery. I hesitated, froze up. He didn't make it. I left the job after that." Elena's expression softened. "You blame yourself." "Don't you?" he countered. A long silence followed. Finally, she nodded. Later that night, Jack woke to soft murmuring. He stepped out to find Elena curled in the armchair, half asleep. "Montclair, James, not safe." He stood quietly in the dark, watching her fight off demons in her sleep. It hit him. This wasn't just a woman in danger. This was someone whose entire identity had been shattered, and now he was in the middle of it. Jack didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. He sat at the small kitchen table, nursing a cup of cheap coffee, listening to Elena's restless murmurs. Even in sleep, she couldn't escape whatever hell she was running from. Around 4 a.m., her voice grew louder. "James, no. Mother, don't sign it." She thrashed slightly, brow furrowed. Jack stood, walked to her side, and gently touched her shoulder. "Elena, you're safe. Wake up." She jolted upright, panting. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize him. Then the panic softened into weary realization. "Nightmare?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "It always starts the same." James yelled. "My mother is crying. The boardroom. Papers. Blood." Jack sat on the edge of the coffee table. "You said he tried to kill you. What happened, exactly?" Elena hesitated. "It was supposed to be a simple meeting. James, me, and my mother. She was preparing to transfer her controlling shares of the Montclair Foundation to me. It was symbolic, mostly, but powerful. She didn't trust James. So he tried to stop it. He tried to kill us both. My mother didn't survive." Jack's breath caught. Jesus. They ruled it an accident, gas leak. But I woke up in the bathtub with a head wound and no memory of the fire. I didn't even know she was dead until I saw the headlines. Jack stood and began to pace. And you think James planted the leak? Staged the whole thing? I know he did. Silence stretched between them. I didn't run because I was scared, she said. I ran because I needed to disappear. He has people watching every hospital, every airport. If I'm found, he finishes the job. And this time, no one's there to help. Jack exhaled slowly. He was in deep now. No more, maybe she's just paranoid. This was something else entirely. I'm going to find out more, he said. Elena tensed. What does that mean? It means you rest. I did some digging. If James killed your mother and tried to kill you, there's got to be proof somewhere. She stared at him. Why are you doing this? Because someone should have helped you the first time. By morning, Jack was sitting at a cafe with his laptop open, fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. He searched for anything, news reports, blogs, message boards, about the Montclair Foundation fire. The official story was airtight. A gas explosion in the family estate's guest house. Elena Montclair presumed dead. James Hallwell, her fiancé, gave a tearful press statement and pledged to carry on the Montclair legacy in her honor. Jack nearly spit out his coffee. What a damn showman. He found a forum post from a housekeeper claiming Elena's mother had intended to change her will days before the explosion. The post was quickly buried beneath trolls and conspiracy theorists. Then came another article, obscure, barely cited. A whistleblower hinted that James had pressured several Montclair board members to consolidate shares just days after Elena's disappearance. It wasn't proof, but it reeked of foul play. Jack closed the laptop. He needed more. He needed names. Back at the apartment, Elena was sitting cross-legged on the floor, folding Jack's laundry. It startled him more than it should have. You clean up better than your apartment, she quipped. You're up early, he said, setting down his bag. I couldn't sleep. Jack handed her a printed article. Your instincts were right. James moved in fast after your death. Too fast. Elena scanned it, her face hardening. There's more, Jack added. A whistleblower, a lawyer, apparently, says your mom planned to change the foundation's structure, name you as primary guardian, not James. Elena's jaw tightened. That's why he panicked. That's what this is all about. Control. Jack nodded. We need to find that lawyer. He may be the only person left who knows what your mother intended. A loud thud from the hallway outside made them both jump. Jack moved to the peephole. Nothing. Elena whispered, I told you. They'll come. Jack didn't argue. Instead, he double-checked the locks and pulled down the blackout curtains. We need to move soon, she said, her voice low. If I'm going to stay dead, I need a better plan. Jack stared at her for a long moment. Then let's make one. The next morning, Jack stood in front of the mirror, trying to come up with a story, something simple to explain why he was home, why he'd been seen bringing a woman inside, why his delivery app said he hadn't worked in days. He knew people were starting to notice. Elena, he said as he brushed his hair back, we need to be careful. My neighbors saw me help you in. If anyone asks, I was a cousin visiting from out of town. She finished for him. I've done this before. Jack raised an eyebrow. That so? I've had to lie for survival since I was a teenager. My father taught me early. Truth is a weapon. If you hand it over, you better be ready to bleed. She was calm, but he could see the tightness in her grip on the teacup she held. The trauma sat just beneath the surface. "You're not alone in this anymore," Jack said. "You don't have to lie to me." She didn't answer, just stared out the window. That evening, someone buzzed the building's front door and didn't say a word when Jack picked up. He glanced at Elena. "Stay inside. Don't answer the door unless it's me." "Jack." "No arguments. One wrong move and your 3 days are up." The hallway was quiet when Jack stepped out, but he felt the presence of someone watching. He checked the stairwell, the back exit. Nothing. But as he returned to his door, he saw it, tucked behind the fire extinguisher, a black envelope. He picked it up cautiously. No name, no markings, just a sealed flap. Jack brought it inside and tore it open. Inside was a photograph. Elena, from 2 days ago, getting on his scooter in the alley. She gasped when she saw it. "They know where I am." Jack turned the envelope upside down. A small note slipped out. "You have 48 hours, or she vanishes for good." "This isn't just a threat," she whispered. "It's James. It's his signature move. Always a countdown." Jack started packing immediately. "We're leaving, right now." "To where?" "My uncle's cabin. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, no trails." Elena didn't argue. She grabbed a small bag with what little she had. 20 minutes later, they were on the road. Jack's beat-up sedan swallowing mile after mile under a cloak of fog and nightfall. She sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, head low. "You shouldn't have gotten involved." He didn't look at her. Too late. The cabin sat deep in the woods, just off an old Forest Service road. It hadn't been used in years, but it was still solid. Wood-burning stove, stocked pantry, and no signals of any kind. For now, it was safe. Jack lit a fire while Elena wrapped herself in a thick wool blanket, eyes flicking around the dim room. "We won't last here long," she said. "If James tracked me to your apartment, he'll find this place. Which is why we use the time wisely." She turned to him, hesitant. "What are you thinking?" "We stop running. We go on the offensive. You have something he wants. Proof. Leverage. We find it. We use it." Elena looked at the floor. "My mother had a safe in her study. She kept records, contracts, letters. I couldn't get to it. James locked down the house." "Then that's where we go next." She stared at him like he was mad. "You're talking about breaking into the Montclair estate. We wouldn't last 5 minutes." Jack shrugged. "Then we get creative." She stood slowly, resolving hardening in her eyes. "All right, but if we do this, it's not just about survival anymore." Jack nodded. "It's about justice." They shook hands, the deal made in firelight. The Montclair estate loomed like a sleeping beast, silent, elegant, and cold. Elena hadn't seen it since the fire. As Jack parked across the tree-lined street, she stared through the windshield, her lips parted slightly, eyes distant. "Are you sure about this?" Jack asked. "No," she admitted, "but we won't get another chance. The house is unoccupied for the weekend. James is at the foundation gala." They'd spent the last 2 days planning, tracing out schematics Jack found online, timing guard patrols from grainy drone footage. It wasn't foolproof, but it was all they had. The plan was simple. Get in, get to the study, find the safe. Jack and Elena slipped through the back gate, hidden under thick coats and hoods. Security cameras were outdated. Most hadn't worked in months. Inside, the estate was hauntingly preserved. A sheet still covered the grand piano. Her mother's scent, a floral trace of jasmine and amber, still lingered in the hallway. Elena's breath caught. She used to read to me here. Jack nodded but stayed alert. They reached the study. The safe was behind a painting. Just as she remembered, Jack knelt, examining the lock. "Do you know the code?" Elena hesitated. Her birthday, June 6th, 1953. The dial clicked. Inside, files, a flash drive, a sealed envelope with Elena's name in her mother's handwriting. She snatched it, eyes glistening. Jack stuffed everything into his bag. Then they heard it, the sound of a car pulling up the gravel drive. "Go!" Jack hissed, grabbing her hand. They exited through the same window they came in, hearts pounding. As they vanished into the woods behind the estate, Elena looked back one last time. "I hope she's proud of me," she whispered. Jack squeezed her hand. She would be. Back at the cabin, the fire crackled as they opened the envelope. Inside was a single-page letter from Elena's mother. "Dearest Elena, if you're reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. I knew James would try to take everything, but you are stronger than you believe. I've left you the truth, his secrets, his crimes, the people he's bought. The USB holds everything. Finish what I started. Love, Mother." Elena pressed the letter to her chest. Jack loaded the USB into his laptop. A folder appeared. M Holdings. Inside were spreadsheets, legal contracts, and most damning of all, videos. Footage of James in a secret meeting with a private security firm. Audio files with recorded threats, payoffs, blackmail. "This is enough to bury him," Jack whispered. But then another file caught Elena's eye. Missing person 1972.pdf. She opened it. It was a report. A girl, aged 17, reported missing, last seen with a Montclair family member. The case was buried. Jack flipped to the end. It listed Elena's grandfather as the primary person of interest. "My mother knew," Elena said softly. "She knew what kind of legacy this family had, and she wanted me to end it." Jack sat back. "We're not just fighting James, we're unraveling generations of silence." They both realized then, this wasn't just a revenge story. It was a reckoning. The fire burned low as the USB files played on loop, each frame more damning than the last. Elena sat on the floor, wrapped in a wool blanket, staring into the hearth's embers as though they could offer comfort. Jack stood near the window, eyes scanning the tree line beyond the cabin. He hadn't spoken much since they discovered the 1972 file. The silence was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. "I need to go public," Elena finally said. Jack turned. "We're not ready. We still don't know how deep this goes." She looked at him. "You saw the evidence. James isn't just a murderer. He's the front man for decades of cover-ups. My mother wanted this exposed." Jack nodded slowly. "But rushing it gets us both killed. We need allies. A plan." "I have a name," Elena replied. "My mother had a lawyer, Martin Talbot. She trusted him. If anyone can help us build a case, it's him." Jack exhaled. "Okay, then we find him." But Elena hesitated. "There's something else. Before the fire, James took my phone. He might have cloned it." Jack's face darkened. "So you think he's been listening? Watching?" "It's possible." Jack paced the room. "We've got to change locations again. We'll ditch everything, phones, IDs, go dark." As they packed, a strange tension built between them. Jack caught Elena glancing at him, her expression unreadable. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, "You didn't ask me how I escaped." Jack paused. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." "I should have died in that fire," she said, "but I didn't. I crawled out through the servants' corridor. I passed out in the woods. When I woke up, someone had carried me to an abandoned clinic, left no name, no trace." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Someone helped you?" "Yes, but I don't know who." The room fell into silence again. Jack looked down, the smallest crack forming in his otherwise calm expression. Elena rose, approaching him. "Do you believe me, Jack?" His answer took a beat longer than she liked. "Yes, I do." But it wasn't fast enough. That night, as the wind howled against the cabin walls, Jack stepped outside to clear his head. When he came back in, the laptop was gone. And so was Elena. Jack's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. The cabin had been turned over, blankets scattered, chairs toppled, but no signs of a struggle. Elena had left by choice. But why? The laptop was the only thing missing. Not even her coat was gone. He replayed the night in his head. Had she lost faith in him? Had his hesitation betrayed her trust? The forest road stretched endlessly before him, dark and winding. Fog clung to the edges like ghosts. His phone was useless, no signal for miles. But he had one card left to play: instinct. He drove to the edge of town, where the road split between the city and the northern cliffs. That's where Elena would go if she needed space. Somewhere open, somewhere with no walls to close in on her. When he pulled into the empty overlook, he saw her. She stood near the railing, wind whipping her hair. The laptop was tucked under one arm. Jack got out slowly. "You planning to jump or just admire the view?" She turned, startled. Her eyes were red. "I needed to think." Jack approached her cautiously. "You could have told me." "I didn't know if I could trust you," she said, voice trembling. "You hesitated earlier." "I hesitated because I care," Jack snapped, "because I don't want to see you get killed rushing into this." Elena clutched the laptop tighter. "I've lived my whole life in other people's plans. My father's, my fiancé's, even my mother's. I thought she gave me a choice, but even she left instructions." "And what about me?" Jack asked. "Was I just a ride out of the alley?" Her gaze softened. "You were the first person who didn't want something from me, who didn't see a Montclair. You just saw me." Jack stepped closer. "Then let me help you, on your terms." Elena looked down at the laptop. "I called Martin Talbot, told him I had evidence. He said he'd meet me." "When?" She glanced at her watch. "In 3 hours, Midtown." Jack blew out a breath. "That doesn't give us much time." "I didn't want to put you in danger." He reached for her hand. "We're already past that." Together they drove back to the city. The night was still, but it felt like a storm was coming. Not of wind or rain, but of headlines and handcuffs. As they passed the city limits, Elena turned to Jack. "If I don't make it?" "You will." "If I don't," she insisted, "promise me you'll get the USB to the press, to anyone who'll listen." Jack stared ahead, jaw tight. "You'll hand it over yourself." Neither of them said anything for the rest of the ride, but in the silence, trust quietly returned, fractured, but reforged. The cabin they found on the outskirts of the city wasn't as secure as the last, but it had something neither of them realized they needed: quiet. After meeting with Martin Talbot in a parked car in the back lot of a shuttered hardware store, Elena and Jack had secured a promise. The lawyer would begin preparing the files for a federal leak, but he needed a few days. That meant more waiting and more hiding. That night, Elena sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a flannel blanket, eyes trained on the starless sky. Jack brought out 2 mugs of coffee, steam rising into the cold air. He sat beside her, not speaking at first. "Elena," he said after a while, "what was it like growing up as a Montclair?" She didn't answer right away. "Structured," she said finally. "Perfect posture, perfect grades, perfect silence. We weren't raised to speak. We were raised to win." Jack gave a short laugh. "I wouldn't last a day." "No," she said, smiling faintly. "You'd break something by accident, or on purpose." He sipped the coffee. "What about your mom? She sounds like she wasn't like the rest." "She tried," Elena said quietly. "She hid notes in my school books, wrote me bedtime stories instead of handing me finance manuals, but she couldn't stop the family machine. She was part of it." Jack leaned forward. "So why did she try to give it all to you?" "She wanted to make it right. She said the Montclair legacy was a curse, unless someone had the courage to rewrite it." They sat in silence again, the fire crackling softly behind them. Jack could feel the weight of everything Elena had carried. For the first time, he understood not just her pain, but her strength. "What about you?" she asked. "Why'd you become a paramedic?" He looked down at his hands. "Thought I could make a difference, save people. But I froze once, just once. Kid didn't make it. After that, I stopped trusting myself." Elena reached over and placed her hand on his. "You saved me." Jack looked at her. "Maybe we saved each other." Later that night, a wind swept through the clearing, howling like a warning. Inside the cabin, Jack checked the locks, while Elena tended to the fire. She'd found an old oil lantern and lit it, bathing the room in golden warmth. Jack turned from the window. "I think we're good tonight." She nodded, but said nothing. He crossed the room and sat beside her. The firelight flickered across her features, painting her in soft shadows. For a moment, the world felt suspended. No threats, no plans, no secrets. Just 2 people who'd been through too much and still weren't sure what came next. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "If we make it out of this, what happens next?" Jack studied her face. "You start over, new name, new life. I figure out what to do with mine." "And us?" He hesitated, then answered truthfully, "I think I'd want to be wherever you are." Elena blinked, her breath catching. "You mean that?" Jack didn't speak. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. And then, quietly, gently, he kissed her. There was no rush, no urgency. Just the kind of kiss that said, "I see you. I've been waiting to." They stayed that way for a while, wrapped in firelight and warmth, the world outside forgotten. Until a sudden flash of headlights pierced through the front window. Elena pulled back. "Someone's here." Jack was already on his feet. "Get to the back room, now." The lantern still glowed as they vanished into the shadows. Outside, 2 figures stepped from a black SUV. They moved quietly, deliberately, Elena's whisper was barely audible. "They found us." Jack reached for the small pistol he'd hidden in the drawer. This time, he wasn't running. The silhouettes outside moved like phantoms, slow and purposeful. Jack's grip on the pistol tightened as he pressed his back against the cabin wall. Elena crouched beside him, her breath shallow, her eyes locked on the glow of the headlights. "How many?" she whispered. "2, maybe 3, Jack replied, but the third didn't exit the vehicle. Elena clenched her fists. James wouldn't come himself. He always sends others. Jack peered through a gap in the curtains. The 2 men moved separately, one circling toward the back, the other approaching the porch. "We can't take them head on," he said. "We need a distraction." Elena looked around the cabin. The propane tank near the shed. Jack's eyes flicked to hers. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" She nodded. "Let's give them a reason to back off." Quiet as ghosts, they slipped out the back door, moving low and fast through the brush. The wind masked their steps as they crept to the propane tank. Jack removed his coat, tied it around the valve, and used his lighter to set the edge smoldering. He guided Elena back into the trees 50 yards away. Then the coat caught flame, and with it, a thunderous explosion erupted, sending debris into the sky and flame licking the corner of the shed. The cabin's intruders hit the ground instinctively. Jack took the moment to move. He tackled one from behind, slamming him into the dirt and wrestling the man's weapon free. Elena scrambled for the woods, adrenaline and fear fueling her sprint. The second man bolted after her. Jack yelled, charging behind them. "Elena, get to the car." She ducked under branches, her lungs burning, the man closing in. Suddenly she tripped over a root, hitting the ground hard. The man lunged and was met with Jack's full weight crashing into him from the side. The 2 men tumbled, fists flying. Jack landed a solid punch to the temple, dazing the attacker. Without hesitation, he grabbed Elena's arm. "Go!" They dashed back toward the road, reaching the hidden sedan just as the third figure from the SUV fired a shot from the tree line. Glass shattered. Jack threw the car in reverse, spun around, and gunned it down the forest path. Behind them, the cabin burned in the distance, glowing orange like the beginning of a war. The road ahead was a blur of darkness. Jack's foot pressed hard against the accelerator. Every twist and turn felt like another heartbeat stolen from death. Elena clutched the seat with one hand, the other holding pressure to a cut on her forehead from the fall. "You okay?" Jack asked, eyes flicking to her briefly. "I've had worse," she muttered, "but that was way too close." Jack's jaw tightened. They were professionals. Military trained, no doubt. She nodded grimly. Black Ridge Security. James used to brag about them, loyal to the dollar. Jack glanced in the rear view. "We've got a head start, but not much." "We can't just run again," Elena said. "We have to hit back." "Then we use what we have," Jack replied. "We go to the press, leak everything." "No," she said quickly. "James has control over media outlets. If we leak too early, he'll spin it and say the files were fabricated." "Then what do we do?" She thought for a moment. "We go to someone untouchable. Someone with power and no ties to James." Jack considered that. "Who?" Elena took a deep breath. "My godmother, Catherine Whalen, CEO of Whalen Global. She was my mother's best friend. She hates everything the Montclairs became." "She'll protect you?" "She'll protect the truth." Jack nodded. Where is she? New York. He grimaced. That's a long drive, and we just painted a giant target on our backs. She looked over at him, her voice calm but firm. Then let's make it count. They drove in silence for a while, the road stretching endlessly under the dark sky. The adrenaline faded, leaving only the weight of exhaustion and bruises. Elena leaned her head against the window. Thank you for coming back for me. Jack's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. You didn't give me a choice. She smiled faintly. I know. They drove into the night, not toward safety, but toward the one thing that might save them, the truth. And this time, they wouldn't be running away. They'd be running straight into the fire. New York City greeted them like a cold interrogation. Gray skies, crowded sidewalks, and a sense of exposure Elena hadn't felt since the night she escaped the estate. Jack parked the car in a shadowy parking garage in the Bronx, careful to choose a spot away from security cameras. They were both exhausted, bruised, and running on caffeine and fear. Keep your hood up, Jack murmured as they exited the garage. We blend in. Hard to blend in when every camera's got facial recognition, Elena muttered, eyes scanning windows above. They moved like ghosts through the city's underbelly, skipping public transit and instead using back alleys and service routes. Jack had learned a few tricks from his paramedic days. Back entrances, underground clinics, safe zones. Elena, on the other hand, moved like someone who'd studied escape routes in her sleep. She never walked in a straight line, avoided shop windows, and checked reflections in mirrored glass. They made it to a small apartment in the Upper East Side, an old safe house maintained by Catherine Whalen for whistleblowers and battered women through one of her non-profit arms. A woman in her 60s, tall, with silver hair and fierce eyes, opened the door. Elena, she breathed, wrapping her goddaughter in a tight embrace. Thank God you're alive. Inside, the safe house was fortified but cozy. Catherine poured tea while Jack double-checked the deadbolts. I knew James was dangerous, Catherine said, pacing, but I didn't think he'd go this far. He killed my mother, Elena said, and he's going to kill me if we don't expose him. Catherine narrowed her eyes. Then let's bring the bastard down. Jack handed over the USB drive. This has it all. Evidence, documents, recordings. We need your help to release it strategically. Catherine sat at her desk, inserted the drive, and her face darkened as she scrolled through the files. Oh my God, she murmured. This isn't just about the Montclairs. He's laundering through foreign accounts, buying arms. Black Ridge Securities doing more than intimidation. They're running black ops for private interests. Jack leaned in. Can we trace the money? Catherine nodded. I'll have my team start, quietly, but you need to lay low. They'll be looking for you. Elena stood. They already are. Catherine's gaze sharpened. Then it's time we gave them something to find. The next day, Jack and Elena watched from the shadows of an adjacent building as Catherine stepped out onto the grand steps of Whalen Tower, flanked by a small group of trusted reporters. Her speech was calm, composed, and devastating. The Montclair legacy, once a cornerstone of charitable efforts, has been corrupted. I am in possession of documents detailing financial crimes, human rights violations, and evidence of attempted murder involving one of their top executives, James Hallwell. Jack could feel the tension in the air as passers-by stopped to watch the live stream on their phones. Elena whispered, "He's watching this right now. He's seething." Catherine didn't mention Elena directly. It was too soon. They needed James to feel exposed, but not cornered. Not yet. Back at the safe house, Catherine's team got to work. An anonymous leak was planned. Files to be distributed to a network of reputable journalists, whistleblower lawyers, and international watchdog groups. But even as they built their offensive, the enemy countered. Elena's phone buzzed, an old number reactivated only hours ago, used strictly for emergencies. A message blinked on the screen. "I see you. Game's not over. Jay." Her hands trembled. Jack grabbed the phone. "He's baiting you." "He's watching us," she replied. "No," Jack said. "He wants you to believe that." A moment later, Catherine entered, face pale. "There's more," she said. "He's holding a press conference in 2 hours, denying everything and offering you, Elena, a way home." Elena's voice turned to steel. "He wants to flip the narrative." "And if he does," Jack added, "you lose your chance to tell the real story." Catherine looked between them. "Then we strike tonight. One final push. Elena, are you ready to go public?" Elena nodded. "Yes, I'm done running. It's time he answers everything." The war was now official, and the next move was hers. Rain returned to New York that night. Fitting, Elena thought, as if the skies were mourning what she was about to do. In a dimly lit basement studio beneath the Wayland Foundation's media branch, Catherine's team worked quickly. 2 cameras, soundproof walls, a controlled broadcast environment where no one could trace the signal. Elena sat in front of the lens, pale but determined. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice was steady. "This is Elena Montclair," she said, looking directly into the camera. "I was presumed dead after a gas explosion in my family estate. That narrative was a lie, crafted by James Hallwell, my former fiancé, who attempted to murder both me and my mother to gain control over the Montclair fortune and the charitable foundation it funded." She paused. No tears. No wavering. "I escaped. My mother didn't, and now I have the evidence to prove it." The video would be embedded in multiple data leaks scheduled to release simultaneously to the public and legal entities across the globe. They would keep her location hidden, but her words would be everywhere. Once the recording ended, Jack met her at the hallway entrance. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "There's no life worth living if it's built on silence," she answered. Catherine approached, holding a press badge and a set of forged documents. Now for the next step. The plan was as elegant as it was dangerous. Fake Elena's death a second time, this time as a confirmed suicide, a planted witness, a burned ID. Just enough for the police to believe she had taken her life after escaping abuse and trauma. The video would then surface days later, pre-recorded, to shock the world and prove James's guilt in full. "Are you sure?" Catherine asked. "This means truly vanishing. New name, new face if you want. No turning back." Elena looked at Jack, then nodded. "Let the world bury Elena Montclair. I'm ready to rise as someone else." The next morning, headlines exploded. Heiress Elena Montclair found dead. Apparent suicide in Manhattan. Montclair tragedy deepens as police investigate claims of abuse and misconduct. And quietly, In a hotel suite across the city, Elena watched the world mourn her while preparing for the final strike. 2 days after her televised death, the contents of the Montclair family's will were leaked by a former board member who had finally had enough. The revelation shocked even those who thought they understood high society corruption. The documents revealed that Elena's mother had indeed transferred the majority of her voting shares to Elena before her death. A series of legal maneuvers had been made to protect Elena's inheritance from James Hallwell. Even if she died, James had never been the rightful heir, but with Elena presumed dead, he had muscled his way into control through forged signatures and corrupted legal filings. Now, with Elena's video going viral and forensic experts confirming the authenticity of her claims, the board was thrown into chaos. The Montclair name was unraveling in real time. Catherine worked the phones relentlessly. International legal teams, federal investigators, even the World Bank had begun looking into the Montclair Trust's offshore ties. But amid the corporate explosions, Jack and Elena retreated to a small hideaway on the coast, an old friend of Catherine's who owed her a favor. "I never thought it would actually work," Elena admitted, staring at the waves. "It hasn't yet," Jack replied, "but the ground beneath him is cracking." Elena pulled out a sealed envelope, her mother's real final will. One copy was in the possession of the Foundation's legal team, but this one was personal. "She trusted me with everything," Elena said, "even when I didn't trust myself." Jack took her hand. "Then let's finish it for her, for you." By the end of the week, James Hallwell would be served with subpoenas in 3 countries, arrest warrants in 2 more. The Foundation would vote to revoke all his powers. But Elena knew this wasn't about headlines. It was about reclaiming the truth, and she was just getting started. Martin Talbot was not the man Elena remembered from childhood visits to her mother's study. Gone was the clean-shaven 3-piece suit version of him. The man who met her in the Wayland Tower's private vault room wore a wrinkled trench coat, glasses too big for his face, and a visible limp from a long-forgotten injury. But his mind was sharp, and when he reviewed the materials from the USB and the will, he didn't even blink. "This isn't just leverage," he said, his voice gravelly. "It's a bomb, a legal bomb. You could dismantle James and the Montclair empire completely." "I don't want the empire," Elena replied. "I just want the truth out, and I want him gone." Martin leaned forward. "Then we do this by the book and by force. The inheritance clause gives you backdoor voting power over the board until the Foundation resets. That window closes in a week." "I'm legally dead," Elena reminded him. "Only until the smoke clears. Then we file a motion to overturn the death certificate. Once the court has evidence of your survival and James's crimes, you'll be reinstated as legal heir and board leader." "And James?" "We let the law drag him into the light." Jack, quiet until now, finally asked, "You think they'll believe her?" Martin gave a tight smile. "After this week, they'll have no choice." Elena Montclair was gone. Nora Blake, brown-haired, blue-eyed, with a new ID and passport, now existed in her place. The transformation was quick and clinical. Catherine's contacts had pulled together a full file. Employment history, school transcripts, tax records, all fabricated and all untraceable. "I feel like a ghost," Elena said, turning her new ID card over in her hands. "You're not," Jack said. "You're reborn." Nora would now be Catherine Whalen's international PR liaison, tasked with working on offshore philanthropic efforts, a convenient cover for both travel and access to high-level meetings. Her new role would give her proximity to the Montclair board as the foundation unraveled and would allow her to attend the event they knew would be James's last attempt to salvage control, the Montclair Foundation Charity Gala. "It's the perfect storm," Catherine explained as she showed them the invite list. "We've secured press access. Nora will be there, officially as my assistant. Jack goes in as catering support. Martin and I will coordinate media leaks to hit at midnight, after James's speech." "Won't he recognize me?" Elena asked. "You'll wear a mask," Catherine said, almost smiling. "It is a masquerade ball, after all." Jack chuckled. "That's poetic." Elena nodded slowly. "Then let's dance." The ballroom was a palace of illusion. Gilded walls, crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and people pretending their money didn't come with blood on it. Music swelled, laughter echoed, and beneath the masks power shifted like quicksand. Elena, now Nora, wore a sapphire gown and a silver mask, her features just obscured enough to escape casual recognition. But her posture was pure Montclair, controlled, elegant, and unapologetically bold. Jack, dressed in black catering garb, moved through the floor carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres while scanning the crowd for trouble. At 9:30 p.m., James Hallwell took the stage. The room fell quiet as he raised his glass. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate legacy. The memory of Elena Montclair, whose spirit inspires us to continue our work." Elena's nails dug into her palm. "And the commitment of this foundation to the future. Through your generosity, we will launch new global initiatives to honor her name." As the audience applauded, Elena felt bile rise in her throat. "That's enough," she muttered. Jack appeared at her side. "Everything's in place. Catherine's team just triggered the media packages. The story drops at midnight." "Then let's give him something to remember." Elena made her move during the gala's final waltz. She stepped out onto the balcony where James had retreated, with a glass of wine basking in the glory of his final deception. For a moment he didn't notice her. The night air was cool. The orchestra swelled inside. "You always loved theatrics," she said quietly. James froze. He turned, eyes narrowing beneath his Venetian mask. "No." She pulled off her mask. "Yes." His face paled. "You're supposed to be dead." "You should have checked the body." James glanced toward the door. "You're not safe here. You think this stunt will—" "I think the truth is about to tear you apart," she interrupted. "Your empire is falling, and the whole world's watching." He took a step forward. "You don't know what you've done." "No," she said. "I know exactly what I've done." Behind them, gasps echoed from the ballroom. The news alerts had hit. Phones vibrated. Screens lit up. Some guests were already leaving. Others were filming. Catherine walked onto the balcony, flanked by security and 2 federal agents. "James Hallwell," she announced. "You're under investigation for financial crimes, conspiracy, and attempted murder." As the agents approached, James lunged, but Jack was already there, slamming him to the ground. Elena didn't flinch. This time, she didn't run. The world didn't just watch. It erupted. By morning, the contents of the USB drive had circulated across every major news outlet. Journalists, regulators, and watchdog organizations were dissecting every damning bite of the Montclair archives. Offshore accounts, manipulated contracts, silent partnerships with Blackridge Security, all of it exposed. For the first time in decades, the Montclair family name was synonymous not with wealth and philanthropy, but with corruption, betrayal, and death. Elena watched from the safe house, wrapped in a blanket, her expression unreadable. Jack sat beside her, scrolling through social feeds. "Senators are calling for hearings," he said. "Interpol's picked up 2 former Blackridge contractors, and Catherine says the board has already called a vote to strip James of all power." Elena didn't smile. She didn't even blink. Jack reached over. "You did it." "No," she said quietly. "Not yet." A file on the USB had been overlooked, encrypted, labeled only as M17. Martin decrypted it that afternoon. Inside was a memo from Elena's mother to the Department of Justice, never sent. A plan to testify against her own father and dismantle the Montclair Trust from within. "She was planning everything," Elena whispered. "And James knew. That's why he silenced her." Martin folded the memo slowly. "He didn't just steal your life, Elena. He tried to erase your mother's legacy, too." She stood, her face hardening. "Then we make sure it lives on." They didn't see it coming. That night, just after sunset, the safe house's power flickered. A blackout, brief but unmistakable. Jack immediately checked the surveillance system. Static. "Something's wrong," he muttered, grabbing his pistol. Elena moved quickly, collecting the hard drives and files they hadn't yet delivered to the DOJ. She paused only when she saw a single red dot blinking on the bedroom wall. "Laser," she said, "we're marked." Jack pulled her down just as a shot shattered the window. They rolled behind the couch. Glass rained over them. "Go out the back," Jack shouted. But as they reached the alley, a figure stepped into view. A face Jack recognized. Devon, Jack's former co-worker from the delivery company. The one who'd always asked a few too many questions. The one who'd seen Elena first. He held a phone to his ear and a gun at his side. "Sorry, man, the money was just too good." Jack lunged. The 2 men crashed into trash cans, fists flying. Elena ran for the car, ducking behind a dumpster. Another shot rang out. Jack gasped, collapsing onto his side. "Jack!" Elena screamed. Devon ran. Tires screeched. The alley filled with smoke. Elena crawled to Jack, hands shaking. Blood seeped through his shirt. "No, no, no." His eyes opened barely. "Don't let them win." They made it to a rural clinic 3 hours north using one of Catherine's emergency drivers. Jack drifted in and out of consciousness as Elena held pressure on the wound. The doctor, a volunteer working off the grid, worked quickly, stitching, injecting, stabilizing. "He'll live," the doctor said at last, "but he needs rest. Real rest." Elena nodded, brushing hair off Jack's forehead. "I'll get him that." She paced the clinic floor alone that night, holding the last USB clone in her hands. "This has to end," she muttered to herself. By morning, she was gone. Jack woke 2 days later, weak but alive. Catherine stood over him. "She left," she said, "took the final evidence to the DOJ herself, said it was her job to finish this." Jack sat up, pain shooting through his side. "Where?" "Washington." He started to move, but Catherine pushed him down. "She's not alone, and she asked me to give you this." She handed him a note. "Don't chase me, Jack. Heal. I'll be back. I promise." Elena stood before the Department of Justice's headquarters, press swarming the stairs. Her face was bare. No more disguises, no more aliases. "I am Elena Montclair," she said into the microphones, "and I've come to testify." Inside, she handed over the final USB. The days that followed were a media storm. She gave interviews, met with federal agents, and told the story no one believed Montclair would ever share. She showed them the scars, emotional and physical, and they listened, not because of her name, but because of her truth. Jack recovered slowly. Each day he watched her from afar, on the news, in articles, speaking at press conferences with unwavering conviction. She was no longer the woman he found in that alley. She was something more. And then, one night, she came home. Not to Montclair, not to Nora Blake, to him. He opened the door, and there she stood, smiling, tired, and finally free. "I told you I'd come back," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, not saying a word. He didn't have to. 6 months later, Elena Montclair stepped onto a stage, not as a survivor, not as an heir, but as a founder. The Montclair Truth Initiative, backed by Wayland Global, aimed to support women escaping corporate abuse and hidden violence. Cameras flashed. Applause roared. And beside her, Jack stood, not in a suit, not holding a microphone, just holding her hand. When she finished her speech, she turned to him. "We made it." He nodded. "You made it." She looked out over the crowd. "We did this together. You saved me, Jack." "No," he replied, brushing her hand with his thumb. "You saved yourself." And in the front row, Catherine watched with tears in her eyes as the Montclair name finally stood for something worth remembering. James Hallwell's arrest wasn't quiet. It was televised. He was cornered in a private airstrip hangar outside Miami, attempting to board a jet bound for the Cayman Islands. Cameras caught it all. Federal agents with weapons drawn, James in his designer suit, screaming about immunity and setup. But there were no loopholes left. The files Elena had handed over exposed years of financial crimes, money laundering, insider trading, unlawful surveillance, and conspiracy to commit murder. His allies turned on him swiftly, each leak bringing more rats to the surface, scrambling to cut deals and avoid prison time. The Montclair Foundation's board voted unanimously to strip James of all roles, rights, and recognition. His assets were frozen. His private security contracts, including Blackridge, were terminated and placed under international investigation. At his arraignment, James was barely recognizable, unkempt, handcuffed, silent. Elena watched the footage from the Foundation's media room, arms crossed. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. "He looks small," she said softly. Jack sat beside her. "Because he always was. He just wore power like a mask." She turned to him. "Is it wrong that I don't feel victorious?" "No," Jack said, "because this wasn't about revenge. It was about truth." She nodded. "And truth has no crown." The headlines that followed were staggering in their scope. Montclair legacy implodes in wake of heiress's whistleblowing. James Hallwell indicted in 42-count federal case, international warrants pending. Elena Montclair resurfaces, rebuilds her name through new foundation. Elena quickly became a reluctant icon, admired for her courage, debated for her privilege, dissected by every media outlet from Vogue to 60 Minutes. She handled it all with a measured grace, granting only a handful of interviews and refusing to commercialize her trauma. "I'm not here to profit," she told one reporter. "I'm here to prevent this from happening to the next girl." Despite the noise, she worked tirelessly with Catherine to refocus the Montclair Foundation on its core mission: philanthropy, not corporate networking, not image rehab. Real work, real people. A portion of Montclair's assets were liquidated and redistributed to survivor shelters, abuse advocacy networks, and human rights watchdogs. Elena personally requested her name be removed from all legacy plaques, buildings, and programs unless they met three simple criteria: transparency, accountability, and independence. Jack, meanwhile, was fielding calls of a different kind. Media outlets wanted the delivery driver turned hero story, book deals, streaming series. One podcast even offered to fly him to LA for a docudrama reenactment of the alley night. He turned them all down. "I just did the right thing," he told one caller. "That's not news." 3 months later, Jack stood in the middle of a freshly painted co-working space on the edge of Brooklyn, his own name on the lease: Open Path Technologies. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. A startup focused on helping small businesses implement digital infrastructure, scheduling, logistics, contactless delivery systems. A seed grant from the Montclair Truth Initiative had helped launch it. "I figured you'd want your own version of justice," Elena had told him, handing him the paperwork. Now he watched as 3 interns set up desks and tested equipment. There was a coffee machine, a standing whiteboard, and a small patch of artificial grass where he planned to put beanbags. Elena arrived just after lunch, dressed down in jeans and a scarf. "This place has potential," she said, circling the room. "So did I," Jack grinned. They sat together in the break room, sipping chai lattes from a local cafe. "Remember when we hid in a cabin with no heat and canned soup?" Elena mused. Jack smirked. "I remember you yelling at me for trying to fix the lock with a spoon." She leaned in closer. "I remember you showing up. Every time." He looked at her. "And I always will." It was time. The city courthouse was gray and severe, but inside the courtroom was small and quiet. Elena stood before a judge to legally petition the reversal of her death certificate. "I am not Nora Blake," she said into the microphone. "I am Elena Abigail Montclair. I was never gone. I was never running. I was fighting." The judge approved the reversal in under 10 minutes. No debate, no delay. But afterward, Elena didn't celebrate. Instead, she went home and pulled out a worn envelope, the last piece of Nora Blake's ID set. She lit a match and dropped it into the sink. As the plastic curled and melted, she whispered, "Thank you." That night, she wrote a final journal entry under the name Nora. "You weren't my disguise. You were my armor, and I needed you to become me again." The next morning, Elena Montclair submitted a formal application to change her legal name to Elena Blake Montclair, in honor of who she'd become. Jack read the notice and smiled. "You found your way home," he said. It rained on the day they opened the Montclair Truth Center's first public space in Brooklyn, a glass-front building with sunlit reading rooms, legal aid desks, and rows of donated books on justice, trauma, and healing. Elena gave a brief speech. Jack stood off to the side, sipping his coffee, watching the crowd applaud. Afterward, they escaped to a quiet cafe on the corner, just the two of them, surrounded by the low hum of jazz and the scent of rain-soaked pavement. They sat in a window seat. Elena pressed her forehead to the glass. "I used to think rain meant chaos," she said. "Now it feels like renewal." Jack reached across the table and took her hand. "We survived the storm." She nodded. "And now we get to build something better." The barista passed by and smiled. "You two look like something out of a movie." Jack chuckled. "If only you knew." They toasted with their coffee cups, laughter echoing through the tiny cafe. Outside, the world kept turning, but inside, two survivors, once strangers in an alley, sat side by side, not chasing escape anymore, only the future.